darkness always gets heavier right before the sun comes up. That's a truth Aileen Wuornos learned real early in her life. What she didn't know was that she herself was gonna become the embodiment of that same darkness. A being that blurred all the lines between victim and killer. In the hot February days of 1991, on the dirt roads of Florida, 7 men got murdered. 7 corpses that told different stories, but they all had one thing in common. Their killer was a woman. A woman who sold her body to survive and took lives for revenge. Today, I want to tell you a story that Hollywood made a movie about, but the reality of it was way more messed up than any film. The story of a woman who hunted on America's highways. A woman who killed men inside their own cars and left their bodies in the woods. But this ain't just the story of a killer. This is the story of a system that turned a kid into a monster. This is the story of a society that watched and did nothing. This is a story of pain, rage, and a revenge that smashed through the boundaries of humanity. You ready to travel into the heart of darkness? You ready to see how a little girl became America's most dangerous female serial killer? So take a deep breath, because what you're about to hear might make you never look at the world the same way again. February 29th, 1956. Rochester, Michigan. A small town north of Detroit that slept under snow in the winter and breathed with a suffocating heat in the summer. In a small, faded house, a girl was born whose destiny was written from day one. They named her Aileen Carol Pittman, but that name didn't last long. Her father was Leo Dale Pittman, a man who never saw his daughter. Not because he was dead, but because he was behind bars. Leo was a sick man, a sickness whose name you gotta say with caution. He raped kids who were 7, 8, 9 years old. Kids who didn't even understand what was happening to them. When Aileen was still in her mother's belly, her father was serving his sentence in a Kansas prison. And 2 years later, in that same prison, Leo killed himself. He hung himself from the ceiling of his cell and let his breaths run out. Maybe the only right thing he ever did in his life was to stop breathing. Her mother, Aileen Wuornos, was a 16-year-old girl when she married Leo. 16, the same age Aileen herself would later start selling her body on the side of the roads. Diane didn't know who her husband was. She didn't know what kind of creature she was living with. She just knew she'd fallen in love and wanted to escape the house she grew up in. 4 years. Diane only lasted 4 years. Until one day she decided she didn't want to be a mother anymore. Aileen was 4 years old, and her brother Keith was a year older. Diane packed her bags, got in a car, and left. She didn't give any explanation, didn't say goodbye. She just left and never came back. 2 kids were left alone in a house that wasn't a home anymore until their grandparents came, Lori and Britta Wuornos. They took the kids to their own house and said, "From now on, this is your home." But Aileen and Keith had a secret they weren't supposed to know. A big secret the adults thought they could keep hidden. They told them Laurie and Britta were their parents. They told them their real mother was their older sister who'd left to live her own life. But kids know. They always know when adults are lying. Aileen Wuornos was a hard man. He'd fought in World War II, came back with memories that eat you up from the inside, came back with a rage that had nowhere to go. And when a man is angry and has power, he finds the weakest people around him to take that anger out on. Britta wasn't a good woman either. She was cold, unfeeling, one of those mothers who thinks motherhood is about feeding and clothing, not hugging, not kissing, not saying, "I love you." Aileen was 6 years old when she learned what pain really means. One day she did something that upset Laurie. What was it? Maybe her voice was too loud. Maybe she broke a dish. Maybe she was just in Laurie's way. Doesn't matter. Laurie took off his belt and whipped her. Not once, not twice. He hit her until her back was bruised. He hit her until the little girl was screaming and begging him to stop. But worse than the physical pain was something else. When it was over, when Laurie buckled his belt and left, Aileen realized nobody was coming to help her. Her grandmother was sitting in the next room and heard Aileen's screams and did nothing. That's what Aileen learned, that you're alone in this world, that nobody's coming to save you. School wasn't any better. The kids treated Aileen badly. They said her clothes were old. They said her hair was dirty. They said she smelled bad, and they were right. Aileen really did wear old clothes. Her hair really wasn't combed. She really did smell bad, because nobody told her what she needed to do. Nobody taught her how to take care of herself. She was 9 years old when her brother Keith did something that changed Aileen's life forever. One day they got into a fight, a normal kid's fight. Keith got angry and said something he shouldn't have said. He said, "You're not even a kid of this family. Your real mom dumped you and left. Laurie and Britta are your grandparents, not your mom and dad." Aileen thought her brother was lying. She thought he was trying to mess with her. But then she went and asked Britta. And Britta, in her same cold tone, said, "Yeah, it's true. Diane is your mother, not me. But she didn't want you, so we raised you. Now that's enough. Go outside and play." That was it. She didn't give any other explanation. Didn't open her arms. Didn't shed a tear. Just said your mother didn't want you and sent her outside. That night, Aileen cried under the blanket. She cried until her eyes were swollen. But the next morning, when she woke up, something had changed. There were no more tears in her eyes. In their place was something hard and cold. Rage. A rage that started collecting inside her like poison. She was 11 years old when she first realized her body could be a tool. In their neighborhood, there were teenage boys who hung out together. smoking cigarettes and talking bullshit. One day, one of them said to Aileen, "If you do something for me, I'll give you $5. Aileen didn't know what that something meant. She just knew $5 was good money. She could buy chocolate with it, something she hadn't had in a long time. The boy took her behind an abandoned building. That's where Aileen found out what that something meant. At first, she didn't want to. At first, she was scared. But the boy said everybody does this stuff. Said it was no big deal. Said if she didn't do it, he wouldn't give her the money. 5 minutes later, Aileen had $5 in her pocket and an empty feeling inside. But she'd learned something important. That her body had value. That men were willing to pay for something she could give them. After that, it became regular. A few times a week, she'd go with different boys behind that building, or into the woods, or anywhere else nobody could see them. She collected money. Money that got spent on cigarettes and gum and sometimes a hamburger. Laurie found out. We don't know how he found out. Maybe someone said something. Maybe he saw for himself. But one night, Aileen came home and Laurie was waiting for her. "Where were you?" His voice was like a knife. "Nowhere. I was out." "Don't lie to me." He took a step forward. "I know what you're doing. I know you're selling yourself like a..." Aileen didn't say anything, just looked at him. "Aren't you ashamed of us?" Laurie yelled. "Aren't you the disgrace of this family?" Then he started hitting her. This time, not just with the belt, with his hands, with his fists, with anything he could. Aileen fell to the ground and curled up and let him hit her. She wasn't even crying anymore, just enduring it. When it was over, Laurie said, "If you do this one more time, I'm throwing you out. I'll send you to the streets where you belong." But Aileen didn't stop. Because she needed the money. Because Laurie and Britta didn't give her an allowance. Because she wanted to feel like she was controlling something in her life. She was 13 years old when she got pregnant. She didn't know from who. There were a lot of boys back in those days. But when her period didn't come, when her stomach started getting bigger, she knew. She told Britta. She expected Britta to help her, to tell her what to do. But Britta just looked at her with eyes full of hate and said, "That's your own problem. You fix it yourself." Abortion was illegal. There were places that did it, but Aileen didn't have the money. So there was one way: give birth and give the baby away. March 23rd, 1970. Aileen was 14 years old, a kid herself, when she gave birth to her baby, a boy. She didn't choose a name for him because she knew she wasn't going to keep him. They took the baby. Social services came and took the baby and gave him to another family. Aileen never saw where her baby went, what happened to him, not even if he was alive. She just knew they took a piece of herself from her and never gave it back. A few months later, Britta died. Liver cancer. Went real quick. One day she was there, the next day she was gone. Laurie wasn't even sad. He just arranged the funeral and went on with his life. But now there was nobody left to even keep up the appearance of guardianship. Lori drank more, got angrier, hit more. Aileen and Keith knew they couldn't stay anymore. Aileen was 15 years old when she decided to run away. One night, after a bloody fight with Lori, she grabbed a backpack, put a few clothes in it, collected whatever money she had, and left. Outside the house, into the cold Michigan night. She had no plan, had nowhere to go. She just knew she couldn't spend one more night in that house. She started walking, walked the empty streets until she reached the highway. There she stood by the side of the road and started hitchhiking. The first car passed, the second one too, but the third car stopped. The driver was a middle-aged man. He looked at her and said, "Where you headed?" "Anywhere far from here." The man laughed. "Get in, I'm going to Florida. You want to come?" Florida. Aileen didn't even know where Florida was. She just knew it was far, and far away was good. Okay. She got in the car, and the man drove off. They were on the road when the man put his hand on Aileen's knee. "You know this ride ain't free, right?" Aileen looked at him. She knew what this man wanted. She knew there was always a price. "I know." They pulled over by the side of the road. In the darkness, among the trees, that's where Aileen felt something forming inside her. For the first time, a rage that burned, a hatred that was turning into something dangerous. But its time hadn't come yet. Aileen hadn't yet learned how to turn that rage into a weapon. Florida was hot, a suffocating heat that knocked the breath right out of you. Aileen got out of that car in a town whose name she didn't know and started walking. She had no money, no place to sleep, no food, just a backpack and the clothes on her back. The first night, she slept under a bridge. The sound of cars passed overhead while she lay on the hard ground, trying not to think about how hungry she was. The next day, she started begging. She stood on a street corner, held out her hand, and asked people for money. Some people gave her something. Most just walked past without even looking at her. But begging didn't bring in enough cash. So Aileen went back to what she knew. At night, she'd go to the side of the road, put on tight clothes, put on makeup with whatever she could find, and wait for cars to stop. Her first customer was a truck driver, a fat man with a big belly and the smell of sweat. He said his name was Jimmy. He asked Aileen her name. Aileen said, "Whatever you want it to be." Jimmy laughed and said, "You're a smart girl." He took her into his truck. It was over real quick. Jimmy gave her $20 and said, "Next time I see you, I'll pick you up again." $20. Aileen looked at that bill and felt something dying inside her, a part of her soul that still had hope, that still thought maybe one day life would get better. But now she knew that hope was a lie. She knew this was the life, selling yourself off piece by piece until nothing's left of you. Months passed. Aileen moved between different cities in Florida. Daytona Beach, Orlando, Jacksonville. It was all the same everywhere. The road, the cars, the men, the money. Some customers were kind. They gave her something to eat, bought her cigarettes. Some of them just wanted someone to talk to, but most of them weren't kind. Some were violent, hurt her, did things that made Aileen scream. Some of them said things, horrible things, that Aileen tried to forget, but couldn't. One time, a customer beat her up. He hit her so hard, her teeth broke. He hit her so hard, Aileen coughed up blood. Then he threw her money on the ground and left, and Aileen stayed there, lying in the dirt, bloody and broken. The police found her, took her to the hospital. The doctors looked at her and asked what happened to her. Aileen said, "I fell." She knew she couldn't tell the truth. She knew if she said a customer beat her, the police would arrest her for prostitution. So she lied, and the doctors knew she was lying, but didn't do anything. She was 17 years old when she got arrested for the first time. Prostitution charge. They took her to jail, put her in a cell with other women who were all Aileen's co-workers. The judge told her that this is the cycle: the road, the customer, the police, jail, back to the road. And she got out. Exactly that happened. She went back to where she was because she had nowhere else to go. Lewis's house was huge. Aileen had never seen a house that big in her life. Lewis took her inside, gave her a drink, then made an offer. "Come stay with me. You can live here. I'll take care of you." Aileen thought this meant she'd have to be Lewis's sex servant. She thought she'd have to be available whenever Lewis wanted. But Lewis said, "No, I just want someone in the house. I'm lonely. My wife died. My kids don't come see me. I just want someone to talk to." It seemed too good to be true. Too easy. And maybe that's why Aileen knew it wouldn't last. Then one night, Lewis got drunk, drank way too much, and his behavior changed. He started touching Aileen. At first, Aileen let him because she thought it was part of the deal. But Lewis got more and more aggressive, started pushing, pulling her hair. "Stop it," Aileen said. "You're hurting me." "Shut up. I'm paying. You do whatever I say." Something broke in Aileen's head. All those years, all those men who told her to shut up, all the pain she'd endured, it all came pouring out at once. She pushed him. Lewis was caught off guard, staggered, and fell to the floor. His head hit the corner of a table. A cracking sound was heard. Aileen stood there and watched. Lewis wasn't moving. Blood was coming from his head. "My God, my God, my God," Aileen whispered under her breath. She went closer, shook Lewis. He showed no reaction, wasn't breathing. He was dead. Aileen stepped back. Her hands were shaking. She didn't know what to do. If the police found out, they'd definitely say Aileen was a murderer, a prostitute who killed a wealthy man. Nobody would believe it was an accident. So she ran, took nothing but a little money from Lewis's wallet, closed the door behind her, and went into the night, never to return. Lewis's body was found 2 days later. The police investigated, but never found Aileen. It was officially declared that Lewis was drunk, fell, and died, an accident. But Aileen knew. She knew she'd killed a man. She knew what she'd felt when she pushed him. A feeling of power, of control. For the first time in her life, she was the stronger one, and the man was the weaker one. And that feeling was good, really good. Years passed. Aileen kept working the streets. Got arrested several more times. Prostitution, theft, illegal possession of a firearm. Every time jail. Every time getting out and going back to the same life. She was 24 years old when she decided to get married. A 70-year-old man named Louis Grimes. He had a yacht, had wealth, and wanted a young wife. Aileen thought maybe this was her salvation. Maybe she could be a housewife, have a normal life, forget her entire past. They got married, went on a honeymoon, but it only took 3 weeks for everything to fall apart. Aileen couldn't play the role of the good wife. She couldn't smile and pretend everything was fine. Her rage was too great, her pain too deep. They started fighting. Big fights that ended with throwing things and screaming. One night, Louis hit her. Aileen picked up a metal bar and hit him in the head. This time, Louis didn't die, but he threw Aileen out. They got divorced after 9 weeks, the shortest marriage of Aileen's life. She went back to the roads, went back to the same life she seemingly couldn't escape. But now something had changed. Now her rage was more refined. Now, every time a customer said something nasty to her, every time one laid a hand on her, Aileen thought of that moment she pushed Louis fell. She thought of that feeling of power. And she was 27 years old when her life changed again. This time because of a woman. Her name was Tyria Moore. Ty, everyone called her. She was 24, had blonde hair, a nice smile. Aileen first saw her in a bar in Daytona Beach. Ty was sitting alone, drinking a beer and staring into space. Aileen sat down next to her and said, "Mind if I join you?" Ty looked at her and smiled. Sure. They started talking. Talked for hours. Ty said our family had disowned her because she was a lesbian. Said she had nowhere to go, no money. Aileen said, I'm in the same situation. Something formed between them, a connection. It was the first time in Aileen's life she felt someone truly understood her. Someone who was cast out like she was. From that night on, they were inseparable. Ty and Aileen became a couple. They lived in Aileen's car, an old Pontiac that Aileen had sort of acquired. They slept in the back seats, ate from cheap restaurants, collected money from wherever they could. Aileen still worked. At night, she'd go to the roadside, pick up customers, bring back money. Ty would wait, sometimes in the car, sometimes in a store. Ty knew what Aileen did and had no problem with it. She'd say, we do whatever we gotta do to survive. For Aileen, Ty became everything. The first person to tell her, I love you. The first person to hold her not for sex, just to be close. The first person who made Aileen feel like she was a human being, not just a thing. And because of that, Aileen was willing to do anything to make Ty happy. Willing to scrape together any amount of money, take any risk, even if that risk meant murder. November 1989 was cold. One of those nights when Florida weather suddenly turns winter-like. Aileen was standing by the highway, short clothes on her body, freezing but pretending it was fine. A car stopped, a silver Cadillac. The driver was a middle-aged man, wearing a suit, an expensive watch on his wrist. "Get in," he said. Aileen got in. The man said his name was Richard Mallory, owned a repair shop, had a wife and kids, but tonight he felt like some fun. "How much?" he asked. Aileen told him the price. Richard nodded and drove off. Said he knew a quiet spot they could go. They went out of the city, onto dirt roads between the woods. The further they went, the more uncomfortable Aileen felt. This was too far out, too isolated. "Where is this place?" she asked. "Don't worry, I know where I'm going." But Aileen was worried. Something about Richard's behavior wasn't right. Something in his eyes. They stopped in the middle of nowhere, just trees and darkness. Richard turned off the engine and turned to Aileen. "All right, get to work." Aileen started, but suddenly Richard grabbed her hand, squeezed, hurt her. "Take it easy," Aileen said. "Shut up." Richard's tone had changed. He wasn't the polite man anymore. Now he was something else. He pulled out a rope from under the seat. Aileen saw it and realized what was about to happen. No, no, no. She tried to open the door, but Richard held her tight. "I said shut up, you." He hit her in the face. A hard punch that messed Aileen up. Blood started pouring from her nose. Richard started tying her hands with the rope. Aileen screamed, kicked, tried to fight back, but Richard was stronger. "You know what I'm gonna do." His voice was calm, almost a whisper. "I want to see how long it takes for to beg me to kill her." And in that moment, in that car, Aileen knew she was going to die. This man wasn't just going to rape her. He was going to kill her. Her whole life flashed before her eyes in an instant. All the beatings, all the rapes, all the pain, it all gathered into one moment. And in that moment, Aileen's rage turned into something else, turned into a will to survive. Her hand got free. She didn't know how. Maybe Richard's rope wasn't tied well. Maybe the adrenaline gave her strength. But her hand was free and went for her purse. Inside her purse was a gun, an old revolver she'd bought for protection. She never thought she'd actually use it. Her hand found the gun, pulled it out. Richard saw. His eyes widened. "What are you doing?" Aileen looked at him. There was nothing in her eyes but pure hatred. "I'm surviving." She fired. The gunshot in the enclosed space of the car was deafening. Aileen's ears rang. The smell of gunpowder hung in the air. Richard made a choked sound, and his hand went to his chest, where the bullet had hit him. You shot me." His voice was like a whisper. Aileen still held the gun. Her hands were shaking but steady. "Yeah, I did." Help me." Richard tried to open the door, but didn't have the strength. Aileen looked at him. That man who a minute ago was wrapping a rope around her, that man who wanted to torture her, was now begging. Something clicked in Aileen's head. An understanding. They were all the same. Lori, Lewis, Richard, all the men who had hurt her in her life. They all thought they had power. They all thought Aileen was weak. But now the power was with Aileen. She fired again, this time in the head. Richard didn't move anymore. Aileen sat there, gun in her hand, panting. Her heart was pounding in her chest. There was blood of her face, her own blood, Richard's blood, both mixed together. I killed someone, she whispered. I killed someone. But then she felt something else. A strange feeling. Not regret, not fear, but freedom. For the first time in her life, Aileen had fought and won. She had to think. She had to decide what to do. She got out of the car on trembling legs. The air was cold, and the sound of crickets in the woods was loud. She looked around. Nobody was there. No houses, no cars, nothing. Just darkness and trees. She left him behind a large tree. Then she went back to the car. Looked inside the car. Blood was everywhere. The seats, the dashboard, the windows. She took Richard's wallet. Inside was $300 cash. A few credit cards, a driver's license. She looked at the photo on the license. Richard Mallory, 49 years old, blue eyes, brown hair. In the photo, he looked like a normal person, like someone you could pass on the street and not think anything bad of. But Aileen knew the truth. She knew what that rope was for. She knew Richard had done this before. Maybe Aileen had saved other women's lives. Maybe this murder was a good thing. She took the car keys and left, drove off in Richard's Cadillac on the dark roads. She had to go to Ty, had to tell her what happened. Ty was waiting in a parking lot. When Aileen arrived in a different car, she was confused at first. Then, she saw the blood on Aileen's face. My God, what happened? She ran towards her. Aileen got out. Her hands were still shaking. Ty, I did something. What? Are you bleeding? Did someone hit you? No. I mean, yes, a customer tried to kill me, but I killed him. Ty stepped back. Her hand went to her mouth. What? He had a rope, Ty. He wanted to torture me. He wanted to kill me. I just defended myself. I looked at her. Then her gaze went to the Cadillac. That's his car? Yeah. Where's the body? In the woods. I dumped him in the woods. Ty thought for a moment. Then she said, Okay. We need to make a plan. We can't keep that car. We need to get rid of it. Aileen was surprised. She thought Ty would be scared, thought she'd leave. But Ty was just thinking about how to help. You're not upset? Aileen asked. Upset? Aileen, you said he wanted to kill you. You defended yourself. This isn't murder. This is survival. Aileen felt something heavy lift from her chest. Ty understood. Ty believed her. I love you, Ty. I love you too. Now let's make a plan. They went somewhere else, further away. Parked the Cadillac in a deserted parking lot. Aileen cleaned the inside as much as she could, though the blood was still visible. Then, they took everything of value inside: the stereo, a few CDs, a camera. They emptied Richard's wallet. $300 cash, but they kept the credit cards. Ty said they could use them, just had to be careful. They went to a cheap motel. Aileen took a shower, washed the blood from her face and hair. Ty sat on the bed and watched. What did it feel like? She asked suddenly. Aileen, who was drying her hair, stopped. What? Killing him? What did it feel like? Aileen thought about it. It felt powerful. For the first time in my life, I was the stronger one. Ty nodded. Good. They always think we're weak. They think they can do whatever they want to us. It's good that one of them learned they're wrong. Aileen came and sat next to Ty. Do you think the police will find him? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe not. But even if they do, there's no reason to suspect us. You're a prostitute with no name, no address. He's a wealthy man. No one would think you could kill him. She was right. For the first time in her life, Eileen's invisibility was an advantage. That night, Aileen couldn't sleep. She lay next to Ty and stared at the ceiling. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Richard's face. But not his dead face, his living face. That moment when he was begging. Was she sorry? No. She felt no regret. Just an emptiness. An empty space where guilt should have been. Maybe something in Aileen had broken a long time ago. Maybe all those years of being beaten, raped, used, had killed a part of her soul. The part that could feel pity, that could feel guilt. The next day, the news spread. Middle-aged man missing, family worried. They showed Richard's picture on TV. His wife was crying, saying her husband never disappeared without a word. Aileen looked at that woman and felt nothing. She thought, "You don't know what your husband was." A week passed. Richard's body was found. 2 hunters stumbled upon him in the woods. The police started an investigation. They said it was probably a car robbery that ended in murder. Aileen and Ty followed the news. Every day, they expected a knock on the door. The police coming to arrest them. But no one came. Richard's money ran out very quickly. $300 seemed like a lot, but when you have to buy food, put gas in the car, rent a motel room, it goes fast. Ty said, "You have to go back to work." Aileen looked at her. "Don't you want to find a normal job?" "With what? We have no diplomas, no work history. What employer would hire us?" She was right. So Aileen went back to the roads. But now something was different. Now every time she got into a customer's car, her hand went to her purse, where the gun was. Now every time a man ordered her what to do, her rage flared up. But she controlled it. controlled it for a few months. Worked, brought back money, went to Thai. Life went on. Until June 1990. 6 months after Richard. That night, Aileen was standing by the interstate highway. A car stopped. A blue pickup truck. The driver was a man about 43 years old. His name was David Spears, although Aileen didn't know his name at the time. "How much do you want?" David asked. Aileen told him the price. David said okay, and she got in. They went to a secluded spot. David took out a bottle of whiskey, offered her some. Aileen took a sip. David drank too. "You tired?" David asked. "I'm always tired." "You should rest. This work isn't good for you." Aileen laughed. "You're worried about me? You're the one paying for sex right now." David shrugged. "Just saying, you deserve better than this." For a moment, Aileen thought maybe David was a good guy. Maybe not all men were evil. "I said you're fat. Customers don't like fat women." That was it. That one sentence was enough. All those years of being told she was ugly, dirty, worthless, they all came rushing back. Her hand went into her purse. David didn't realize what was happening until it was too late. Aileen pulled out the gun and pointed it at him. Hey, what are you doing? You thought you could say whatever you want to me?" Eileen's voice was calm, dangerous. ... I was just joking, okay? I was trying to joke. Joking. My whole life, people like you have been joking. Telling me I'm nothing. Telling me I'm only made for their use. No, I didn't mean it like that. Aileen fired. Once, twice, 3 times. David fell back in his seat, blood spurting from his chest. Aileen sat there and watched him. This time, it wasn't guilt. This time, it was just exhaustion. Exhaustion from always having to endure, always having to take it, always having to hear how worthless she was. She got out of the car, dragged the body out, and threw it into the tall grass by the roadside. Took his wallet, his watch, anything valuable. This time, it was easier. This time, her hands didn't shake. She went to Ty. Ty took one look at her and knew. "Again?" "Yeah. Sorry." "What did he say?" Aileen told her. Ty nodded. "Then he deserved it." Aileen sat down. "Ty, I think something's wrong with me. I think I'm turning into something bad." Ty came and sat next to her, took her hand. "No, you're not bad. You're just defending yourself. They start it, not you. But I'm starting to enjoy killing them. Every time I pull the trigger, I feel alive. I feel powerful." "Well, there's nothing wrong with having power. You were powerless your whole life. Now it's your turn." Maybe Ty was right. Maybe Aileen was just making up for all those years of being a victim. Or maybe she was turning into the very thing she hated. August 1990. 2 months later, another one. This time his name was Charles Carskadden. 56 years old, addicted to methamphetamine. He saw Aileen and wanted to pick her up. Charles was nervous from the start. His hands were shaking. He was sweating. Aileen recognized the signs of addiction. She used drugs sometimes herself. They went to a secluded spot. Charles took out a meth pipe, offered her some. Aileen refused. She'd learned not to do drugs with customers. Charles used it, then got much more agitated. started talking fast. Nonsense. Suddenly, he put his hands around Aileen's neck and squeezed. "I love it when you scream," he said, his eyes wide from the drugs. Aileen couldn't breathe. She tried to push Charles's hands away, but didn't have the strength. She saw darkness falling before her eyes, but her hand reached for her purse. Her fingers touched the cold metal of the gun. Pulled it out. She fired without looking. The bullet hit Charles in the side. His grip on Aileen's neck loosened. Aileen breathed, coughed, then fired again, and again, and again, until the magazine was empty. Charles was slumped in the seat, full of bullet holes. Aileen sat there, panting. Her neck hurt. She knew there would be bruises. That was the third one, the third man she had killed. And it was getting easier each time. September 1990. The fourth one. Peter Symes, 65 years old. A retiree who was traveling. A kind man, truly kind. When he saw Aileen, he stopped more out of pity than for sex. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Why?" "Because you look like you're in trouble." Aileen looked at him. Peter had kind eyes. They reminded her of someone who had helped Aileen a long time ago. "I'm fine," Aileen said. "If you just need a ride somewhere, I can take you. No need for anything else." For a moment, Aileen thought maybe she would accept. Maybe she would let this one live. But then, Peter made a wrong move. He put his hand on Aileen's shoulder. A harmless gesture, a compassionate gesture. But Aileen couldn't stand being touched anymore. Every hand that touched her, even with kindness, just reminded her of all the hands that had touched her with violence. She pulled out the gun. Peter's eyes widened. "No, please, I just wanted to help." "Nobody wants to help," Aileen said. "Everyone wants something from me." "No, I swear." She fired. Peter fell. Aileen looked at him and for the first time felt a twinge of guilt. This man was truly kind. He truly wanted to help, but it was too late. Too late for Aileen to tell the difference between the good ones and the bad ones. Now they were all the same. October 1990. The police were catching on. 4 bodies in 6 months. All middle-aged men. All killed with a gun. All found by deserted Florida roadsides. The news started talking about a serial killer. A criminal psychologist on TV said, "This profile perfectly matches an organized killer. Probably a white male, 20 to 40 years old, who enjoys killing." Aileen was sitting in a cheap motel, listening to this and laughing. They were looking for a man. It would never occur to them the killer was a woman. Ty was laughing too. Idiots. They think only men can be killers. "Maybe we should just let them think that," Aileen said. But Ty had something else on her mind. "Aileen, have you thought that maybe we could get more out of this?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're killing these men. Why just take their wallets? Why not sell their cars? Why not go to their houses and steal everything valuable?" Aileen looked at her. "Are you saying I should become a robber?" "I'm saying if you're gonna do this, at least get more out of it." We're always short on money. I'm tired of living in dirty motels and eating garbage food. There was something in Ty's tone that upset Aileen. Ty, I do these things to survive, to defend myself. I know, baby. I'm just saying we could be smarter. Aileen thought maybe she was right. Maybe she really should be getting more benefit. Money was always tight. They were always worried about where to sleep, what to eat. Okay, Aileen said. Next time I'll take more. Ty smiled and kissed her. That's my girl. November 1990, the fifth one. Troy Burris, 45 years old, sold auto parts. Had a nice car, a nearly new Toyota. Aileen had decided from the start she wanted this car. When she got in, he was very polite. Even started talking about his wife, about his kids. Aileen listened and nodded and smiled. They went to a secluded spot. Troy handed over the money, $70. Aileen put the money in her purse, next to the gun. All right, get started, Troy said. Aileen pulled out the gun and pointed it at him. No. You start. Troy froze. What are you doing? I'm robbing you. Get out. Is this a joke? Aileen fired once, over his head. The sound in the enclosed car was terrifying. Troy screamed. Get out, or the next one's in your head. End. Troy got out. Hands up. Please, I have a wife and kids. Please don't kill me. Aileen got out too, still holding the gun. Give me your wallet. Troy, with trembling hands, took out his wallet and gave it to her. Aileen glanced inside. $120. Your watch, too. Troy took off his watch. A Rolex. Probably worth a few $1,000s. Good. Now turn around. What? I said turn around. Troy turned around. Aileen could have just taken the car and his things and left. She could have let Troy live. But something in her head said, if you let him live, he'll go straight to the police. He'll describe you immediately. They'll arrest you. And it was logical. Completely logical. She shot him in the back of the head. Troy fell. Aileen approached and shot again to make sure. Then dragged him into the woods. Not too far. Just enough so he couldn't be seen from the road. Got into the Toyota and left. The car was nice, clean, gas tank full. Went to Ty. Ty saw the car. She was excited. Wow, this is great. This is so much better than those dirty old cars before. And this. Aileen showed the Rolex. Oh my God, that's worth a lot of money. We can sell it. They sold it to a dealer. Got $3,000 for it. The most money Aileen had ever seen in her life. That night, they went to a nice restaurant. Ate real food, not fast food. Drank, laughed. Ty took Aileen's hand and said, "We're making it. We're getting better." Aileen smiled, but something inside her was unsettled. This wasn't self-defense anymore. This was robbery. Murder for money. But when she looked into Ty's happy eyes, when she saw how satisfied Ty was, That little voice in her head was silenced. December 1990. The sixth one, Walter Gino Antonio, 51 years old, a traveling truck driver. When he saw Aileen, he thought he'd gotten lucky. "You look tired, honey," he said. "I'm always tired. Let's go somewhere comfortable. I know a good motel." But Aileen said, "No, let's go somewhere else. I know a place that's more private." She directed him to the same woods she was now very familiar with. Walter thought he was going for sex. Didn't know he was going to die. They stopped. Walter turned to Aileen, smiling. "All right, how much do you want?" Aileen pulled out the gun. "Everything you have." Walter's smile faded. No, wait. "Give me your wallet." Walter gave her his wallet. Inside was $300. "Anything else? Jewelry? Watch?" "Just this." Walter showed his wedding ring. "Take it off, please. This is my mother's ring. She gave it to me when she died. Take it off, or I'll take your finger with it." Walter, with trembling hands, took off the ring and gave it to her. "Now get out." Walter got out. "Please, I work. I can get you more money. Just give me time." Aileen thought maybe she could let this one live too. Maybe she could let him go and just take the truck and the money. But Walter made a mistake. He said, "You're a good girl. I know you don't want to hurt anyone." And that word, good girl, triggered something in Aileen, because she was always told to be a good girl. Good girls stay quiet. Good girls endure. "I'm not a good girl," Aileen said. She fired. Walter fell. This time, Aileen didn't feel anything. Not guilt, not power, nothing. Just a job that needed doing. ... Dragged him into the woods. Went back to the truck. The truck was big. Lots of stuff inside. Aileen took everything she could carry. A radio, a camera, some clothes she could sell. This time she made $5,000 from selling the items. She couldn't sleep at night. Or if she did sleep, she had nightmares. The faces of all the men she'd killed gathered around her, begging, screaming, showing her their blood. One night she woke up screaming. Ty held her and said, "Shh, calm down. It's just a nightmare." "Ty, I think we have to stop." "Stop? What do you mean?" "I mean I can't do this anymore. I'm going crazy." Ty let her go, pulled back. "Aileen, we have money now. For the first time in our lives, we're living well. You can't stop now." "But you what? You want to go back to that old life? Sleep under bridges? Let every asshole beat you up?" "No, but keep going. Just one or two more. Then we can go somewhere else, start a new life. I promise." Aileen looked at her. She wanted to believe it. She wanted to think there was an end, that somewhere they could stop and have a normal life. "Okay," she said. "One or two more." January 1991. The seventh one. This was the last one. The last person Aileen killed before everything fell apart. His name was Robert David Keir, 60 years old, a retired police officer. When Aileen got in, Robert had something in his gaze that worried Aileen, a sense of analysis, like someone used to examining people. "What's your name?" he asked. "Susie." Aileen lied. "Really? You don't look like a Susie. Why? Don't know. Just a feeling. Aileen felt danger. This man was too smart. Had to finish it quickly. Let's go somewhere private, she said. Aileen quickly pulled out the gun. But Robert was faster. He had a gun too. Pulled it out and aimed at Aileen. I'm police, he said. Even retired, I always carry a gun. Now calmly put that gun down. Aileen froze. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of from the start. Getting caught. I said put it down. But Aileen didn't. Instead, she fired. At the same time, Robert fired too. Two sounds rose together. Aileen felt something burning graze her arm. Robert's bullet. But Eileen's bullet hit Robert in the chest. Robert fell. Aileen approached, still holding the gun. Robert was breathing. Hard and painful. You are the one, he said in a weak voice. That serial killer everyone's looking for. Aileen said nothing. Why? Robert asked. Why are you doing these things? Because I can't let it happen anymore. I can't let anyone hurt me anymore. But I just, Robert coughed. Blood came from his mouth. I just wanted. All of you just want. All of you want something from me. None of you want to save me. You just want to use me or throw me in jail. She fired again. Robert didn't move anymore. Aileen sat on the ground next to the body. Her arm was burning, where the bullet had grazed her, but the wound was superficial. She looked at Robert, a police officer. Now everyone would know. Now she couldn't escape. Took his wallet and gun and left. Went back to Ty. When she entered the motel, Ty saw her wound. What happened? One of them had a gun. He was police. What? Oh my God, Aileen. I know this is bad, but I killed him. Nobody saw. But Ty knew. She knew this had gotten way too dangerous. We have to go, Ty said. We have to get out of Florida. Where? Anywhere. We just have to go. But it was already too late. The news of Robert Keir's death exploded like a bomb. A retired police officer murdered. This couldn't be ignored anymore. The Florida police deployed all their forces. The FBI got involved. The media went crazy. And for the first time, there was a witness. A woman who was passing by that road that day had seen a car. She'd seen a blonde woman in dirty clothes getting out of the car in a hurry to escape. They gave this description to the media. TV and newspapers were filled with the news. Serial killer might be a woman. Aileen and Ty were sitting in a cheap motel in northern Florida, watching this news. Aileen felt the walls closing in on her. We have to go, Ty said again. We have to go now. Go where? We don't have money to go far. Then we need to get money. Aileen looked at her. No, I can't anymore. 7 people is enough. I can't do it anymore. Ty got nervous. Then what do we do? Sit here and wait for them to come arrest us? I don't know. Their argument escalated. For the first time, they had a real fight. Ty yelled that Aileen was selfish, that she only thought of herself. Aileen yelled that Ty didn't love her, that she was just using her. Words were said that couldn't be taken back. That night, for the first time, they slept apart. In the morning, Aileen woke up and Ty was gone. She'd left a note. Gone to think for a bit. I'll be back. But hours passed and Ty didn't return. Aileen started to worry, started to think maybe Ty had left for good. Then there was a knock at the door. Aileen went to the door, thinking it was Ty. But when she opened it, 2 police officers were standing there. Aileen Wuornos. Aileen's heart stopped. Who am I? Let us see your hands. Aileen knew she couldn't escape. Calmly raised her hands. You're under arrest for the murder of Robert David Keir. They handcuffed her, took her outside. As she was being led to the police car, she saw Ty standing there, behind another car. Their eyes locked. There was guilt in Ty's eyes. Put her in an interrogation room. A metal table, 2 chairs, a 2-way mirror. Aileen sat there for what felt like hours. Finally, 2 detectives came in. One was a man in his 40s named Bruce. The other was a woman in her 30s named Ellen. Bruce opened a file on the table. Do you know why you're here? Aileen said nothing. I don't know who those names are. Ellen leaned forward. Aileen, your friend Ty told us everything. Everything. The blood in Aileen's veins froze. What did Ty say? She said you killed them. Said you came back with their money and belongings. Said you threatened to kill her too if she said anything. She's lying, Aileen screamed. She's the one who told me to do these things. She's the one who wanted the money. I was just defending myself. Defending yourself? Bruce raised an eyebrow. 7 people? They all wanted to hurt me. Richard had a rope. He wanted to torture me. Charles was choking me. They all. And Peter Seams? Ellen put a photo on the table. This 65-year-old man with no history of violence? He wanted to hurt you too? Aileen looked at Peter's photo, remembered his kind eyes, his compassionate voice. I just what? Just wanted his money? No, you don't understand. None of you understand. Bruce leaned back in his chair. Then tell us. Explain it to us. And Aileen started. She told them about Laurie and his belt, about the neighborhood boys who first paid her, about getting pregnant at 13. No, Bruce said. No, you don't. Nobody has the right to be judge, jury, and executioner. Aileen laughed, a bitter, soulless laugh. You talk about the law? Where was the law when Laurie was beating me? Where was it when I was a child and had to sell my body to buy food? The law never protected me. Why should I respect it now? The silence in the room was heavy. Ellen took a deep breath. Aileen, if you cooperate, if you confess, we can talk to the prosecutor. Maybe we can make sure you don't get the death penalty. Confess? To what? To 7 murders. Aileen thought about it. She could deny it. She could say Ty was lying. But she knew it was useless. They had evidence. The wallets, the gun Aileen had sold, witnesses who had seen Aileen with one of the victims. And a part of Aileen was tired. Tired of running, tired of lying, tired of being. "Okay," she said. "Okay, I'll tell you everything." And she told them. Every detail. Every murder. Every moment. Everything she remembered. Ty was the only one who had loved Aileen, even if that love was dirty and conditional. She thought about the 7 men she had killed. Their faces passed before her eyes, one by one. Richard with his rope, David with his demeaning words, Charles with his hands around her neck, Peter with his kind eyes. If she could go back, would she do things differently? Maybe Richard. He really wanted to kill Aileen, but the others? Maybe David was just an idiot. Maybe Charles was just high on drugs. Maybe Peter really wanted to help. Maybe Aileen had become the very monster she was running from. But it was too late for maybes. There was no way back anymore. She cried that night. For the first time in years, she really cried. Not tears of anger, not tears of rage, the tears of a broken human being who knew there was no hope left. The next day, her lawyer came, a 40-year-old man named Steve Glazer. He sat on the other side of the bulletproof glass and looked at Aileen. "I know it's tough," he said, "but we need to talk about our defense." "What defense?" I confessed. "We can say it was self-defense. We can say you suffered from PTSD from years of trauma." "Do you believe that?" Steve paused. "It doesn't matter what I believe. What matters is what the jury believes. They won't believe anything except that I'm a monster. Don't let them think that. Aileen, you have a story. A tragic story. If told right, maybe we can save you." "I don't want to be saved," Aileen said. Steve looked at her in surprise. "What?" "I said I don't want to be saved. I'm tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of living. If I'm going to die, let's just get it over with." "Aileen, don't talk like that. We can..." "You can't do anything. I killed 7 people. What do you think is going to happen?" Steve was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "At least let us fight for your life. You deserve that." But Aileen wasn't sure she really deserved it. The trial began 6 months later. January 1992. They brought Aileen into the courtroom in handcuffs and chains. She sat at the defense table and looked at the crowd. The victims' families were there. Richard Mallory's wife, Troy Burris's children, Peter Seams's sister. They were all looking at her with eyes full of hatred. The reporters were there too. Cameras, microphones, pens. Everyone wanted to hear the story of the female serial killer. This was a rare occurrence. Women usually didn't become serial killers. The judge entered, an old man with white hair and a hard gaze. He said, "We are gathered here for the trial of Aileen Carol Wuornos on the charge of first-degree murder of Richard Mallory. Just one of the murders. They had to have separate trials for each, but they started with the first one. The prosecutor was a woman named John Tanner. She stood up and began to speak. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I want to tell you a story. The story of a man named Richard Mallory, a 49-year-old man who had a wife and kids, a business, a normal life. One night, he went out and never came back. Tanner walked in front of the jury. What happened to him? He met that woman. She pointed her finger at Aileen. Aileen Wuornos, a street prostitute who got into his car, took him to a secluded forest and shot him 6 times. 6 bullets in the body of a defenseless human being. Aileen wanted to scream that he wasn't defenseless. Tanner's speech went on for an hour. She called witnesses. The person who found the body, the medical examiner, who said Richard had been shot 6 times, the detectives who had taken Aileen's confession, and finally, Ty. Ty entered the courtroom. Her hair was done. She had makeup on, wearing respectable clothes. She sat in the witness chair and swore to tell the truth. Aileen looked at her. Her heart was pounding in her chest. Tanner began. Ms. Moore, how did you meet Ms. Wuornos? In a bar. I was alone. She came and sat next to me. We started talking. And what was your relationship like? We were in love. Ty lowered her head. At least I thought we were. What did you know about Ms. Wuornos's occupation? I knew she was a prostitute. She worked the streets, picked up customers. And when the first murder happened, what occurred? Ty took a deep breath. She came home that night with a new car, blood on her face. She said a customer had tried to hurt her and she'd had to kill him. What did you think? I believed her. I thought she was just defending herself. But then what? Then there was another one, and another one, and I realized this wasn't self-defense anymore. This was hunting. Aileen couldn't take it anymore. She stood up. You're lying. You're the one who told me to do these things. You're the one who wanted the money. The judge banged his gavel. Ms. Wuornos, sit down or I'll have you removed. Steve pulled her down. Calm down. You're hurting your own case. But Aileen couldn't calm down. Ty was lying. She was saving herself by destroying Aileen. Ty continued. She threatened me, said if I told anyone anything, she'd kill me too. I was scared. So why did you stay with her? Because I had nowhere to go. And I thought maybe I could help her. Maybe I could stop her. Lies after lies. Aileen looked at Ty and felt her heart breaking. Not because of the betrayal. She expected that. But because the only person Aileen had loved, the only person she thought understood her, was ultimately just like all the others. It was the defense's turn. Steve stood up. Honorable jury, I want to clarify some things for you. Aileen Wuornos is not a cold, merciless killer. She is a damaged woman, a woman who has been abused her entire life. Steve began to tell Aileen's story. From childhood, from Laurie, from prostitution. He called experts who talked about post-traumatic stress disorder. They said that because of years of trauma, Aileen could no longer properly discern when she was truly in danger and when she wasn't. And finally, he called Aileen herself. Aileen stood up and went to the witness stand. She swore the oath, sat down, and looked at the jury. 12 strangers who were supposed to decide if she lived or died. Steve began. Aileen, tell us what happened that night with Richard Mallory. Aileen took a deep breath. I got in his car. We went to a secluded place. He took out a rope, started tying my hands. I knew that if I let him, he would kill me. So I fought back. I pulled out my gun and fired. Why did you think he wanted to kill you? Because everyone does. Because my whole life, men have tried to destroy me. One of them didn't succeed only because I fought back. Do you regret killing Richard Mallory? Aileen paused. This was the question everyone was waiting for. If she said yes, maybe they'd feel pity. If she said no, they'd condemn her. I don't know, she finally said. A part of me is sorry. But another part of me says if I hadn't killed him, I would have been killed. And I had the right to survive. It was Tanner's turn to question her. She came forward, fixed her sharp gaze on Aileen. Miss Wuornos, you claim Mr. Mallory wanted to kill you. What evidence do you have? I saw the rope, and where's this rope? I don't know. It was probably in the car. We found no rope in Mr. Mallory's car. Aileen felt the ground shaking beneath her feet. Maybe it fell out. Maybe I remember wrong. But there was something that scared me. Or maybe there was nothing. Maybe you just wanted his money. No, you took $300 from his wallet. You stole his car. Does that sound like self-defense to you? You shot him 6 times. 6 times. Even after he was down, you kept shooting. Why? Because I wanted to make sure he couldn't hurt me. Or because you enjoyed it. No, I never enjoyed it. But Tanner smiled. Are you sure? Because it seems after the first one, it got easier. The jury went to deliberate. They came back after 90 minutes. Fast. Very fast. Aileen knew that was bad. When the jury comes back quickly, it means they're sure. The judge nodded. And what is your recommendation regarding sentencing? Death, Your Honor. Aileen felt her knees buckle. Steve caught her. The judge looked at her. Aileen Wuornos, this court sentences you to death by electrocution. May God have mercy on your soul. He banged the gavel. It was all over. They took her to Broward Women's Prison, the death row section, where women who were supposed to die were kept. There were only 3 other women there. The other cells were empty. Female murderers were rare. Aileen's cell was small. A bed, a toilet, a sink, a small window that let in little light. This was where she was supposed to spend the rest of her life until execution day. The subsequent trials came one after another. For David Spears, guilty, death. For Charles Karscaden, guilty, death. For Troy Barres, guilty, death. Each time, the same story. Tanner said Aileen was a cold killer. Steve said Aileen was a victim. The jury said guilty. For Peter Seams and Walter Antonio, Aileen decided to plead guilty without a trial. She was tired of sitting in that courtroom, tired of repeating the same things, tired of the hateful stares from the families. Only Robert Keir wasn't tried. The prosecutor decided it wasn't necessary. Aileen had already been sentenced to death 6 times. What difference would one more make? The days in prison were all the same. Waking up, breakfast, walking in the yard for an hour, returning to the cell, sitting, sleeping. The same cycle every day. Aileen spent her time thinking about her life, about her choices, about how she ended up here. Sometimes reporters came for interviews. Aileen agreed because she was bored. She talked to them, sometimes said strange things because it didn't matter anymore. What more could they take from her that they hadn't already? One reporter asked, "Any regrets?" Aileen thought for a long time. About some of them. Peter Seams was a good man. Maybe that one was a mistake. But the others? No, they deserved it. Even if some of them were innocent. None of them were innocent. They all came to a prostitute. They all wanted something from me. Maybe they didn't intend to kill, but they intended to use. And I wasn't going to let anyone use me anymore. The reporter wrote, then asked, "What about Tyria Moore?" Aileen's face hardened. "What about her? Do you still love her?" "No, she sold me out. She bought her own salvation with my blood. If you could say one thing to her, what would it be?" Aileen paused for a moment. "I'd say I hope every night, when she sleeps, she sees my face. I hope it never gives her peace." But the truth was, Aileen still missed Ty. She still lay awake at night and remembered the touch of Ty's hands, the sound of her laughter, the taste of her kisses. Love is a strange thing. Even when she hated her, she still loved her. Years passed. 1992 became 93, 94, 95. Aileen stayed in her cell and grew old. Her hair turned white, her face wrinkled, her body weakened. Her lawyer, Steve, filed appeals. Each time, they were rejected. Higher courts said the trial was fair. The evidence was sufficient. The sentence was correct. In the year 2000, a filmmaker came to see Aileen, wanted to make a documentary about her. Aileen agreed. Why not? Maybe at least one person would hear her real story. In those interviews, Aileen said things she hadn't said before. She talked about loneliness, about "I'm not a monster," she said in one interview. "I'm a human being to whom bad things happened, very bad things, and I reacted in the way I knew how. It wasn't right, I know, but when your whole life teaches you that violence is the only way, learning another way is hard. If you could go back, what would you change?" Aileen smiled bitterly. "Everything. Nothing. I don't know. Maybe if one person, just one person, had helped me when I was a child, maybe everything would be different. But nobody helped. So I became what I became." In 2001, they made a feature film about her. It was called Monster. The lead actress was Charlize Theron, who made herself ugly for the role of Aileen. Aileen didn't see the film. It wasn't possible in prison. But she was told that Theron acted very well, that she showed both Aileen's human side and her violent side. Theron won an Oscar for that role. Aileen laughed when she heard. Interesting. Someone is getting an award for playing me, while I'm just waiting to die. 2002, 11 years after the arrest. Aileen decided enough was enough. She told her lawyer, "I want to finish this. I want you to stop appealing." "Aileen, there are still legal avenues. We can..." "No, I'm tired. I've been in this cell for 11 years. Every day I wake up and know I'm going to die, but don't know when. This is torture. I want to end it. If we don't appeal, an execution date will be set." "Good. Let them set it." Steve tried to dissuade her, but Aileen was firm. He finally gave in. The date was set, October 9th, 2002. The last days were strange for Aileen. On one hand, she had peace. Finally, there was a definite end. On the other hand, Aileen was never a religious person. But in those final days, the prison chaplain came to see her. "Do you want to talk about God?" he asked. "Where was God when I was a child?" Aileen asked. "Where was he when Lori was beating me? Where was he when I had to sell myself so I wouldn't starve?" "You can be forgiven." "I don't want to be forgiven. I want to be forgotten." But the night before the execution, Aileen prayed. She didn't know to whom, didn't know how. She just sat in her cell and said quietly, "On the morning of October 9th, the guards came, said it was time." Aileen put on the clean clothes they had given her, combed her hair, looked at herself in the small cell mirror. The woman in the mirror was old, tired, broken. But in her eyes, there was still something. A spark that hadn't died yet. "Goodbye," Aileen said to that woman in the mirror. "I hope where you're going, it's easier." They took her from the cell. She walked down the long corridor. On both sides of the corridor, other prisoners reached their hands out through the bars. Some of them called out, "Stay strong, Aileen." Aileen nodded. These prisoners respected her. To them, Aileen was a hero, a woman who fought, who resisted, who stood up for herself. They reached the execution chamber, a small room with an electric chair in the middle. The chair was old, wooden, with leather straps and copper wires. Witnesses sat behind the glass. Aileen looked. A heavy silence filled the room. Aileen took a deep breath. "Now finish it. I'm ready." They placed the mask over her face, the wet sponge on her head. Everything was ready. Aileen closed her eyes. She thought about her life, about all the pain, all the rage, all the loneliness. But she also thought about the good moments. Those nights she had laughed with Ty. Those moments she had felt alive. Those days she had hoped things might get better. The pain was immediate and total. Every cell in her body caught fire at once. Her muscles contracted. Her heart shuddered. Breath was torn from her chest. But it only lasted a few seconds. Then, everything went dark. Aileen Wuornos, 56 years old, died at 9:47 a.m. on October 9th, 2002. The medical examiner confirmed it. The guards unbuckled the straps. The witnesses filed out. Some of them were crying. The victims, families who had finally seen justice. Some were silent, thinking about whether this was truly justice or just another death. They took Aileen's body. According to her wishes, she was cremated. Her ashes were scattered at sea, where there would be no grave, no marker that she had ever lived. But her story remained. The media talked about her for months. Some said Aileen was a monster, a cold killer who deserved her death. Some said she was a victim. The truth was probably somewhere between the two. Aileen wasn't just a victim, wasn't just a killer. She was both. Tyria Moore never spoke publicly about Aileen after the execution. She moved on with her life, tried to forget. But those who knew her said she slept badly at night, had nightmares, heard Aileen's voice. Maybe Aileen was telling the truth. Maybe she truly never gave her peace. The victims' families tried to move on. Some could, some couldn't. Aileen's death was the closing of a chapter for some. For others, just a reminder of a pain that never ended. And society talked for a short while about how killers are made, about child abuse, about a system that fails and puts children at risk. But they soon forgot. Life went on. Other news came. And Aileen Wuornos became just a name in true crime books, a subject for documentaries, a role for actors. But for those who remember her, Aileen's story is still important because it shows how an innocent child can become a killer, how pain, when accumulated in one person, can explode in terrible ways. Years later, a criminal psychologist wrote an article about Aileen. In it, he said, Aileen Wuornos was the product of the worst things our society can do to a child: neglect, abuse, abandonment, homelessness, forced prostitution. Any one of these things can destroy a person. All of them together, they can create a monster. But the important thing to remember is, monsters are made, not born. Aileen wasn't born with the desire to kill. She became this way because society taught her that her life had no value, that violence was the only way, that no one was coming to save her. If one person, just one person, when Aileen was 4 years old, or 6, or 9, had taken her hand and said, "I'm here, I see you, you matter," maybe 7 people would still be alive. Maybe Aileen herself would have had a different life. That's the lesson. That's what we need to learn. Not how to punish better, but how to care better, how to save at-risk children before it's too late. But did anyone listen? Some, but the majority? No, because it's easier to see Aileen as an exception, a rare example of pure evil. It's easier to think we had no role in creating her. But the truth is harder. The truth is we all have a role. Every time we see a hurt child and look away. Every time we see a homeless woman and walk past. Every time we hear a child is being abused and say nothing. We are creating another Aileen. Maybe not a killer, maybe just a broken person, an addict, a homeless individual, but still a human being who could have been saved if someone had taken their hand. Today, 20 years after Aileen's death, there are still children on the streets. Still teenagers forced to sell their bodies to survive. Still a system that fails and puts the most vulnerable people at risk. And maybe tomorrow, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, there will be another Aileen. With a different name, a different face, but the same story. A child who was hurt, no one helped, and who grew up with a rage that turned into violence. Or maybe, just maybe, we will learn to see, learn to help, learn to take a child's hand before it's too late. That was Aileen's hope in those final moments. Not for herself, for her it was too late, but for other children who are now walking the same path she walked. I hope my story is a lesson. Those were her last words. The question that remains for all of us is, did we learn? Did we listen? Or is the story going to repeat itself with a new victim who becomes an executioner? So the endless cycle of violence continues? The answer to this question is up to us, all of us. And maybe, just maybe, if we listen enough, if we care enough, we can prevent another Aileen from being made. Perhaps this is the only real way to honor the victims. Not just those Aileen killed, but Aileen herself, the child who was a victim before she was a killer. And perhaps, somewhere beyond this world, Aileen's spirit has finally found peace, the peace she never had in life. Perhaps, a few years after Aileen's execution, a young girl named Samantha was sitting in a homeless shelter in Florida. She was 16. She had run away from a father who got drunk at night and beat her. Now she was on the streets. She had no money, no food, nowhere to go, and men were starting to notice Samantha. Men who said they could help her, said they could give her money, a place to stay, food, just in exchange for one little thing. Samantha knew what that little thing was, and she was thinking maybe she would accept because she had no other choice. But that night, there was a woman in the shelter, a social worker named Linda. She came and sat next to Samantha. "Hello," she said. "My name is Linda. Can I help you?" Samantha looked at her. "How?" "We can find a safe place for you. We can help you get back to school. We can give you counseling, support." "Why? Why do you want to help me?" Linda smiled, a sad smile. "Because a long time ago, there was another girl that nobody helped. And that girl became something nobody wanted her to become. Her name was Aileen. And I promised I would never let something like that happen again. She could go back to the street, get into one of those men's cars, start selling herself. The path so many had taken before her. The path that led to dark places. Or she could take a chance on this woman, on this small hope that maybe there was another way. Linda smiled and took Samantha's hand. I'm glad. From today, you're not alone. And there, in that small shelter, something happened that never happened for Aileen. Someone took Samantha's hand. Someone said, "You matter." Someone stayed.